Good news for all of you fans of digital currency out there. The government has now decided to take a look at your blockchain technology and go, you made this? I made this. And whether or not anyone else will ever be allowed to play with it again, that is a question for the future, though to be fair, the UK government hasn't actually created their own digital currency just yet. They have merely entered into a collaboration with the MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, to try and figure out whether or not a UK-only digital currency would be a possibility. Of course, it would. Making it wouldn't really be the difficult part. Controlling it, tracking it, and legislating it to the degree that the government might want, that'll be the more problematic part, but the actual creation isn't all that complicated. Now, what's far more interesting here, though, isn't even necessarily the Bitcoin and blockchain technology itself being used by the government. It is the intent, shall we say, because originally the idea of, say, Bitcoin or digital currency in general was to try and create a new decentralized currency. The idea was like, okay, the government has way too much control over our finances. We would like a different system, independent of this, capable of standing on its own, using all of the technology and all of the modern innovations of the internet. It was a brilliant little idea and a beautiful one as well, though in my opinion, again, any hope of things like Bitcoin ever being used as an actual, stable, realistic currency, there was an opportunity, but it has, whoosh, come and gone at the speed of light, practically, as it has turned into far more of an investment than an actually viable payment form, as the primary value of Bitcoin right now is how much fiat currency you can turn it into. Pretty much the exact opposite of the actual original intent. But why now? Why is the Bank of England suddenly going like, yeah, we're looking into a UK-only digital currency? Seems like a weird bit of timing, unless... wasn't there something else that was going to be happening pretty soon? Alright, the introduction of digital identification. Ah, rightio then. This is one of those cyberpunky, almost doomsday level topics here, which is why we're talking about it, but the entire idea of this currency-less society, the money-less society where you just have like a piece of plastic, a card, etc., man, it sounded like a great thing like 10 years ago. Oh, I don't have to lug around a massive wallet filled with coins and bills and all kinds of crap. I don't have to sit and count this out at the store. I have to wait 5 hours for the poorly educated person on the other side of the register to go 1, 2, 5. Cool, I can just take my piece of plastic and I can swipe it and voila, problem solved. Not to mention all of the English funding? No, not really. But loan assets, the way of raising money, of getting loans, getting credit cards for various purchases. Now, that has turned into an enormous trap as well, mind you. But the idea of getting a thing now and paying for it slowly over a course of time via a credit card, for example, is not an inherently bad one, so long as it is used by individuals with a modicum of economic sense. It was a very interesting, innovative, and in many ways extraordinarily beneficial piece of technology that is now being bent a little bit beyond its original scope. Because what you begin to realize is that if all of your money exists purely in digital form, not just even guaranteed by a bank, who is of course supposed to be like, okay, you know, we have value here, we guarantee your money, and there's tons of legislation binding us down, meaning that we can't really just take your cash and run, with the exception of a handful of circumstances. There are banks, for example, that will say that if you don't have enough money on your account, they'll just take whatever money is there and then close your account. Which is certainly a thing, absolutely. And there are also entities like PayPal which straddle the line. They have all of the power of a bank, but none of the responsibilities. You know, This is the problem with the whole digital revolution. It has been moving too fast for the rest of our society to keep up with it. And if we eventually end up at the point where all of our money is digital, if your entire net worth as a human is based upon the numbers of ones and zeros on a bank account controlled purely by the state, not even by the bank, a theoretically, technically independent organization, well, considering our constant moves towards more and more overreaching governmental power and widespread electronic censorship, that sounds like a really, really goddamn terrible idea, because there is a real solid benefit to having something physical paper, and particularly when it comes to identification. Now, a passport, take the regular passport for example. What do you use a passport for? Well, you use it maybe once or twice a year to get out of the country, and that's about it. It's simply to go like, hey, I have a passport, I'm the person I pretend to be. Okay, that was slightly off, but I am this person. You are supposed to allow me into your country because we've got all kinds of treaties and blah, 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 and this is the proof of all of that garbage. Fine. It is freedom in a little cardboardy shape. Wonderful. Now, if all of that becomes digital, including, what was that? There was another thing that happened recently, wasn't there? Yes, Ukraine rather silently introduced full digital ID, the equivalent of a passport, except, of course, their digital ID would also extend a bit beyond that. The new digital identification documents will be valid not only for traveling, but also provide individuals identities in a variety of scenarios, including identifications, confirmation of citizenship, and provision of governmental services. Right, so we've already expanded this quite a bit beyond whether or not you're allowed in and out of the country. In fact, now your citizenship is tied to this electronic thing. Okay, your access to governmental services is tied to this electronic thing. We're starting to connect an awful lot of dots in a fashion that can be all too easy to change. When you have your actual physical identification, there are many ways to prove that you are who you are. A lot of them are somewhat arbitrary and cumbersome, to put it mildly, but there are ways and means. If we move around, this is, bear in mind, far beyond where we are now, this kind of the doomsday scenario. If we get to the point where fully digital IDs are the norm, well, you don't even have a piece of paper to prove that you are who you are, that you own what you own. You have a bunch of digital ones and zeros, reliant on a bunch of other digital ones and zero systems to function to actually be able to prove your identity. And we are going to tie this up to our banking system in all due likelihood in the not too distant future. Now again, the Bank of England has made clear that they have no plans whatsoever to introduce any kind of digital currency. Oh shit, we had the plans anyways. Oh goddammit. Well, now it's too late. I guess you should have told us you didn't like this before we did it. That tends to be how the government introduces these things. It's like, oh, we have no plans until we do, of course, naturally. Now, all of this is pure speculation, and frankly, my English today is particularly difficult, it turns out. And, frankly, good old-fashioned doom-mongering to a degree. It might not happen. In fact, we might be better protected with regulations with digital IDs. Maybe, perhaps even, your digital identity can be tied up to other services as well. Like, say, for example, social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of this. Saying that, oh, no, you can't choose to not verify me, Twitter, because I actually have a digital identification that allows me to go, I am who I am, and now I am protected by all of my government's laws. And you can't just delete me. This is now a part of my identity. This is a part of my digital profile, my digital portfolio. And honestly, and in many cases, that is something that we do need. In today's society, where having access to Twitter, having access to social media is an enormous part of being active in not just modern day society, but in the political discourse, you probably should have some kind of governmentally guaranteed right to these services. Now that brings up a whole different bag of bugs and nonsense, guaranteed. Particularly when it comes to forcing your rights as a UK citizen onto a American company. But then again, honestly, reinforcing nations' laws and rights over that of private corporations is probably something we should have been doing a very, very long time ago, and have only slowly been starting to do now with platforms like YouTube, for example, where Germany in particular has been on the leading edge of this for reasons that perhaps we'd better not speculate on right now, ensuring that YouTube actually has to abide by German law rather than simply legislate via terms of service, a problem in and of itself. Nevertheless, I am not particularly fond of the idea of governmental digital currency, at the very least, because even with banks, as scummy as banks can be and have been throughout the ages, banks are a valuable tool, they're a valuable service that we used to have bound down by a tremendous quantity of rules and regulations. And the thing is, whilst regulation often does breed regulation, absolutely, when it comes to making sure that you have rights and privileges, putting that into actual legalistic writing tends to be rather useful. When we move this entirely onto the digital sphere, governed entirely by the nation, well, now you're doing the old Norwegian saying, putting the goat to watch over the oats. All of your rights, all of your money, all of your privileges are now given to the people who determine what those privileges are. So they are the ones who determine what you get, they are the guarantors of what you get, and they're the ones who decide whether or not they can change it. We're putting a bit too much power into a little bit too few baskets here, in my opinion. But again, this is very, very early days. Maybe it won't be that bad. Maybe it'll be something completely different. But, well, the years have turned Arch into a little bit of a skeptic, shall we say, on many of these things. So, what do you guys think about this? I know I'm hardly an expert on cryptocurrency by any extent. My knowledge of it is fairly surface level. I see a lot of the problems rather than the advantages right now, to be entirely honest with you. So, I'd love some feedback on it, and until next time, I've been Arch, thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.